If there really was some sort of a massive natural disaster that happened around 11,000 years ago, and it killed almost everybody, and just the people that survived were fucking monsters. Just monsters. And if you think about civilization like that, impact theory from 11,800 years ago, and then you start looking at around 6,000 years ago, is when we start seeing evidence of agriculture and written language and crude, you know, but also like with an understanding of the solar system, like a detailed map of the solar system. They're probably the only people that survive, the most horrific amongst us, the craziest people, the people that were willing to eat people, the people that are the monsters in the movies, where when a catastrophe happens, they start turning to cannibalism. We're the ancestors of those people.
The people in Egypt, they believed in what's called Kemet, the people that existed before the Egyptians. When we hear these stories about the Great Pyramid being a tomb for the pharaoh, it's worth mentioning that even the locals didn't believe that. The saying that the pyramids were built to be tombs for the pharaohs wasn't even developed until 150 years ago. That's it. They were taught Kemet. And it's worth mentioning that when you go through inside these pyramids of Giza, there's not one single glyph in any of them whatsoever. There was never a mummy found in any Egyptian pyramid ever. Quite literally, the only reason why we are told this stuff is because that was the theory developed by these men that went in there and said, I believe these must have been for the pharaohs. That makes sense.
So it's all just one group of people had one theory, and that theory just stuck around.
100%.
There's still remains of like Greek ruins from 300 BC.
In Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Really? Jamie, can you pull some of that up?
Yeah.
So here it is. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had no idea. So at one point in time, that had been some sort of a thriving community.
Yeah, that Iconium.
Wow. So they had an amphitheater.
It was a full-on Greek city.
That's incredible. What is that statue? It's a Buddha statue.
A lot of historians think that the Vedas and Buddhism started more in the Afghanistan area.
The Vedas?
Yeah.
Wow, look at all these Buddhas.
There was this brief moment of Greco-Buddhism in Central Asia.
That's so strange, because it's so obviously Greek art.
The folds in the robe and all that, yeah.
Yeah. Human civilization is so bizarre.
The fact that there's pyramids on 5 continents around the world. Is it a coincidence that they just happened to start building pyramids on multiple continents?
Here you see one from Egypt, one from Mexico. And one from Cambodia.
If you look at comparisons of the Indonesia pyramids and the ones in Mexico, they have similarities of the stripped steps that go up the middle of it. The reason why this is significant is if the Great Pyramid is 4,500 years old, my argument is that there are connections across the oceans that are not supposed to exist. According to everything, they're adamant. It wasn't until Christopher Columbus, 1492, sailed the ocean blue, but yet there's evidence that goes back more than 1,000 years prior. Peru, Egypt, places in Italy, Greece. There's a pyramid in Greece.
The other thing is, that's near where these shaman lived. And there was these sort of things, and I said, what are these? And they said, they're reflection ponds. I said, oh, like for reflecting. And he goes, no, for reflecting. And I'd never considered that you don't look at the stars by going, but that really, you look down and you mark. In 7 years when it comes around again, you're like, pattern. Because I'm always like, how do you look up and learn a pattern of that?
Right.
But by looking down.
So they had ponds just to look at the reflection of the stars and map them out.
Yeah, the shaman did. That was like in their neighborhood. And the way you were a shaman is if you had a birthmark on your head when you were born, they immediately were like, 2 boards, rope, and just put 2 boards and roped you and began a lifetime of, so you're a shaman.
Zecharia Sitchin was this guy who wrote these books. It was all about these ancient Sumerians. And one of the weirdest things about it, these people had these clay tablets that had like a detailed map of the solar system. 6,000 years ago. They carved it in clay. And they also had these giant beings with like people with tails sitting on their lap. And they had the double helix of the DNA. He interpreted all this as this was some sort of an ancient recording, like where they were trying to record what had happened. And when he was going through these ancient Sumerian texts, he believes that it was really all about these beings called the Anunnaki. Those from heaven to earth came, and that these beings came from this planet that is described as Nibiru, and that they have manipulated human DNA forever. Oh, this is a question. Why does he have a watch on? Isn't that a watch?
How dare you? Impossible. Stop.
What is that?
It's jewelry.
It looks like a watch. I mean, maybe it's jewelry, but it's on his wrist, and it's a circle, and it's with a band.
Right.
I mean, what is that?
Mini Antikythera mechanism.
It looks
the
like my
iPod Mini.
watch.
It does.
It does.
That's crazy.
But, of course, the explanation is like, of course not. Just jewelry. But it does look like it, doesn't it?
Well, it just makes sense that if they developed weapons and they developed clothing and they developed shelters, if they had the sophistication to be able to construct these buildings, why wouldn't they be able to construct a watch?
Right.
An automatic watch. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, this is the same exact
This
one.
is fucking bonkers, man. Army ants build a bridge to invade wasp nest.
Yeah, look at that. And see the eggs? They're carrying the wasp eggs out of the nest.
Oh my god, what a bunch of creeps.
Everybody that commented was like, there's a rope in the middle of that. That's not real.
But it's
There's
not.
no rope. You can see right through it.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that it's just all
That is
ants.
just ant bodies.
Imagine how fucking strong the ants at the very top that are hanging onto the board, holding a giant rope of ants.
Yeah.
What a crazy organism.
Denisova Cave is another example of a missing chapter in the human story. They left behind certain physical objects. One of them is a green stone bracelet, and a hole has been drilled through the bracelet. Then the archaeologists started to take a look at the drill marks, and what they discovered was a huge anomaly. That was drilled with a fixed drill at extremely high speed. This is thought to be 40 or 50,000 years old. There is not supposed to have been any such technology in that period that was capable of drilling with a stable fixed drill, and yet there it appears. Also incredible, very fine bone needles, and the suggestion has been, were they making skin boats, for example? That would explain how they managed to get themselves to Australia. Those kind of needles, that kind of bracelet, you could expect to find them in what archaeologists call the Neolithic, but to find it in the Paleolithic is very puzzling and very odd, and it suggests that the Denisovans were certainly not shambling subhumans, that they were refined creatures.
This is wild. The soleus muscle, the wider muscle of the calf. Turns out the soleus is an unusual muscle because it's a very small percentage of our total musculature, but its energy utilization is enormously high. When people just bounce their heel, their insulin sensitivity improves, their resting glucose improves, and all they're doing is moving a bit more, but they are moving their soleus. What's happening? It's likely that they're mimicking walking during the day, that they're getting these positive effects.
Wow.
I'm not encouraging people to just do this, but these micro movements that we do add up a lot during the day.
I watched a rat trip a mousetrap, a rat trap today. So look at this rat. He realizes that's a trap. There's a nice piece of cheese on it. So he brings a stick and he trips the fucking trap. Come on, man. He knows what he's doing. He didn't even freak out.
No, it didn't startle him at all.
At all.
No. Yeah, that could break your neck very
Easily. That's supposed to kill you. He's
Yeah.
got to know, probably. These things killed my friends. I mean, you think about how ridiculous human beings are. We spend most of our lives accumulating stuff, trying to get status, and meanwhile, there's rocks headed our way that are going 45,000 miles an hour that could exterminate 90% of the population instantaneously and completely erase every little bit of information we've ever accumulated. All the knowledge, all of our history, all of our understanding of physics, mathematics, astronomy, everything gone. See ya. Goodbye. Welcome to being a fucking ape man again.
Yep.
The largest vessel that's ever been found from ancient Egypt is
a canoe.
Basically. And now the point that's significant in this is that is the largest boat that they've ever found. If they're going to claim that they were moving, 100-ton stone blocks on barges, I just want to iterate that they've never found one, and there was no inscription that shows anything large enough that would have done it. I've said it before, and I feel bad, but it's a shitbox in comparison.
Look at it. It is a total shitbox. It's such a bad design. Look at how low it has. Very little depth in the water, so it will have very little stability. And then it's also top heavy. It's like driving around in a Sprinter van on a racetrack. Any wave at all is tipping that bullshit boat over. I was watching this documentary today. It's a new James Fox documentary about a UFO landing in Brazil in 1996. Holy shit, it's incredible. I had no idea that there's this city called Varginha, and in 1996, according to everyone who was there, according to medical records of people who were there, the military came in, they recovered a crashed UFO. And there was living creatures that people came in contact with, and one of them was this tiny little thing that this guy carried, and he carried it to wherever they were going to examine it. When he carried it, he got whatever was on its skin. It had like a slippery kind of skin. It got into his body and infected him, and he wound up with this horrible general infection. And he wound up dying. His body shut down. His immune system shut down. His body didn't know what the fuck to do with this alien thing that he was interacting with. There's real records of this guy contacting this thing, grabbing it, carrying it in. All these people witnessed it. And then this guy winds up with this insane infection shortly there afterwards. That's all documented too. All of his medical records. Do you know how many fucking religions there could be?
This is a religion, for sure. It just means a bunch of people listen to a uniform thought process. I don't think you need a book. I don't think you need shit.
You know Alex Gray, the visionary artist? I'm sure you've seen his work. Alex Gray started a religion, and he has a church that is designed around his art. It's called Entheon. That's the church. Like, how amazing. You got to see what it looks like on the outside.
Whoa.
That's the outside of it. Look at that. Entheon. So they have like fucking yoga classes there and shit. They're like a real church. Imagine going into the woods with all these hippies and you go do yoga in that place with this guy.
I know.
And you're all chanting and shit. And he's a real deal. He's not like trying to rip people off. They play music and they get together, and it's not like he gets to fuck everybody's wife. It's a regular church.
I hope it stays that way. Because
Well,
this
with this
story
guy.
sometimes goes the wrong way.
They almost always go the wrong way.
Real quick, did you hear what Elon Musk said on the Full Send podcast a few months ago?
What?
So at 2 hours and like 53 minutes, they start talking about cataclysms and ice ages. He goes on to say that...
Well, let's listen to this.
Okay.
Listen to
If you
back.
read about ice ages, there's deep rabbit hole on ice ages. Deep rabbit hole. I mean, I think it's just interesting how much Earth's climate has changed, and even magnetically where the poles are has shifted over time. Something happened around that ice age, because we see no writing before that ice age, and we start to see writing pop up in multiple places on Earth after the most recent colloquially termed ice age.
That's about it. He knows. I look at these topics that we're into: cataclysms, Younger Dryas, lost ancient technology.
Magnetic poles.
That's the one thing. I would
the
like to dive
scary
into
one.
that.
We've had more professors suspended or dismissed in the last 10 or 15 years than we've had since McCarthyism. When I was in college, campuses were where you went to hear the other side, right? That's how you rounded things out. If there was a speaker coming that was totally on the other side, you went to listen to them. Now, students think it's okay to shout down somebody you disagree with. If you don't listen to them, you get rid of them. What's that about?
When it comes to bats, how much variation is there? I know that there's some really large bats in Asia, right?
There's, yes, large bats in Asia,
What's
Africa.
the biggest bat?
The biggest bat has a wingspan of almost 6 feet. I
Whoa.
have a colleague who swears that the biggest ones sometimes actually get to 6 feet.
What is that bat?
Flying foxes. There are 200 kinds of flying foxes. Some of them are small and some are big.
Look at the size of that sucker. That's in the Philippines? Look at that. That's crazy.
Well, that's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
like holding your fish out a bit in front of you to exaggerate.
But it seems, even if it's forced perspective, that
But-
seems pretty large. There's 2,300,000 stones in the Great Pyramid. Do you know if you cut and place 10 stones a day, it would take you 664 years to make the pyramid?
It was the craziest thing that I've seen that humans have made. Like, awe-inspiring.
I more and more think that we just have to use our imagination, because we're thinking of technology only as technology that we've implemented.
Yeah.
But it's possible there was a completely different branch of technology,
Yeah.
and they had figured out something that allowed them to manipulate enormous stones.
Yeah.
We just haven't figured it out. Have you been to the Vatican?
No.
It's wild.
Yeah?
Vatican's confusing. Yeah, because there's so much shit there. I knew that there was an immense amount of artwork there, but when you actually go there and you see the billions and billions of dollars worth of art that was accumulated over who knows how many hundreds, if not thousands of years, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
It's like a raider's hoard. I mean,
Right.
that's really what it is.
Well, yeah.
They clearly stole all this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have it all in one spot. And that one spot is also its own country, which is
Yeah.
weird. It's its own
Yeah.
country inside Italy. So it has its own extradition laws, which is great because it happens to be overrun with pedophiles.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is true.
It's pretty fucked.
Then you have